Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for the Resica Falls Leaders Update. Hang tight. We're going to start just at the top of the hour. So thanks for joining us and hang on tight. Talk to you soon.
Give me one second. Okay, volume.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to hang tight for a couple of minutes while we wait for a few more folks to be joining us, but we're thrilled that you're here for the Resica Falls Leaders Update. We'll be back with you shortly. All right. Good evening, everyone. Want to say a big thank you to everyone out there tonight for joining us for the Resica Falls Virtual Leaders Update. We are excited for what we hope will be another great camping season at Resica Falls this coming summer. And we're thrilled that you're here to join us to learn a little bit more about what it's going to look like. We have the whole camp leadership team with us tonight, and we'll be doing some introductions of everyone. But before we get there, real quick, I want to go over a couple of quick Zoom things. Tonight, we're using a Zoom webinar. So that means that you won't have the opportunity to talk and we can't hear you. However, there is the chat, the question and answer feature. So we ask that, any questions that you have, direct them into that question and answer feature. You'll see it at the bottom or the top of your screen, depending on where your Zoom icons are. But when you ask things in the chat, it's tougher for us to respond because we can't just respond to you. We then literally respond to everybody at the same time, and they will not have seen your question. So when everything's done through the question and answer section, that helps a whole lot more, and it's a whole lot more user-friendly for not only you to be able to get your question answered, but then maybe others will see your question and won't have to ask the same question 10 times. So we are here tonight to be able to share information about the upcoming Resica Falls season. We want to help make sure that we're able to take all those questions that are asked, and so that question and answer feature is the best place to do that. So without any further ado, we're going to get going here tonight. I want to start off by introducing our camp leadership team who is joining us here, who is making the presentation tonight and is ready to make this a great summer for you and your scouts who are attending camp. Safety is going to be the key, as it always is, but especially this year, balancing safety and fun is the name of the game. So I want to kick it off by introducing the team. First of all, in his first year officially as the camp director, Steve Mock has served as the assistant camp director for several years under camp director emeritus Chris Brenner. But Steve Mock has stepped up to the camp director role, and we are thrilled. So let's give Steve a round of applause. Also joining Steve on his leadership team are Jerry Reed, longtime stalwart of camp. Jerry's going to be the assistant camp director this year. Jacob Huff is going to be continuing on the leadership team, and Jacob's going to be the program director this year. Andy Connell, also returning, is going to be the assistant program director. Matt Gutterman is going to be our pandemic response coordinator, and I am your director of outdoor adventures for the Cradle of Liberty Council. So without any further ado, we will kick it over to Steve to take it from here.
All right, thanks, John. So going over our agenda for this evening, a couple of points. So we're going to really try and hit on some of the big changes that we're going to be experiencing this summer at camp. So we'll first talk about our check-in with Dr. Jerry Reed. We'll go on then and look at our dining hall operations and daily COVID procedures with Matt Gutterman. Jacob will give us a little behind the scenes peek at some of the program changes that are happening, and then I'll round it out with the check-in process overhaul or check-out process overhaul. Couple of points as we're going along, right? John talked about the question and answer feature. That is the key way to ask your questions. Andy Connell will be tending the question and answer feature kind of throughout the webinar this evening. He will respond to some questions directly inside the Q&A feature. And then he will also maybe throw a couple questions for us to answer out loud. We will answer a few questions pertaining to the topic at hand. When we're talking about check-in, we'll answer a few questions that people might have about check-in. But down the road, we're going to have a wrap up with a big question and answer session. So if there's any unanswered questions at the end of the night, we can hit home on all of those things. And I ask that if we're talking about check-in and you have a question about how we're going to do things in the dining hall, wait until we talk about what's happening in the dining hall. So that way we might already be answering your question in that piece. So if you have a question about something like that, wait until we kind of go over those pieces. Without any further ado, bouncing it over to Jerry Reed to talk about our check-in. Oh, there's a whole other promo here about leaders guides, right? Talking about our leaders guides. absolutely make sure you check out the Leaders Guide that went live earlier last week. Our program guide will be up very, very shortly as well. Now it's off to Jerry. Jerry, you're muted.
Ready? All right, here we go. 2021. We can't wait to see your smiling eyes this summer. Going to be a little different. So there's a couple of COVID things we want to kind of get across before you come to camp this summer. There's probably two real good sources of information that we're going to talk about tonight is the Leader's Guide that's posted online and the resicafalls.org website. We'll talk about both and find where we can look up all these forms and stuff we're going to talk about. So before you even get to camp, you need to do a few things. Resica will assign the arrival times, check-in sites, and the troop invoices, okay? And that should be coming to you guys somewhere around June 4th. And so be looking for that. And a couple of things you need to do before camp is to have every scout and every leader needs to have a medical form. The youth medical form needs to be filled out and signed by the parents and the doctor. And the adult one just needs to be assigned by the doctor. This has to be done within the year. And so that's the medical forms. Everybody has to have one if you're staying at camp. There's also, before you go, the COVID-19 screening form is also new this year. They ask you a bunch of questions of have you been somewhere, have you been in contact with anybody with COVID and all that. And you also have to fill out that form before you come to camp because we're going to collect them at the elementary school this year and do a couple of things down there. So everybody that's coming to camp in the car needs to fill out one of these COVID-19 screening forms. And we will collect them at the school and we'll take your temperature as we collect them. So you should probably take your temperature before you leave your site that everybody's gathering at and collect all the medicals and bring your COVID forms in the car. Leave your COVID forms in the car because we're going to be collecting them. Anybody with 100.4 temperature, unfortunately cannot remain in camp. So that whole car needs to kind of go home before you are allowed to even come into camp. Once you reach the elementary school, we ask that you kind of stay in your car after you have your temperature taken, and then one leader that has all the paperwork is going to check in with us at the side of the school. Okay, the school is on the right there, and we'll have a check-in table just for one leader, kind of keeping distance and things like that with this COVID. And after you're all checked in, a new process at the school this year is the medical rechecks. We're going to do them at the school as well. Once the paperwork's all done, we're going to have you get out of your cars. There's going to be multi-tables just like the dining hall, and we're going to do the medical rechecks at the school. Once all that's done, we're going to send you on up to camp, and it's kind of the usual check-in. A staff member will greet you at the gate at the White House, kind of give you a little instruction as you go up the hill, and you'll go around the back of Unami Lodge, the office, and kind of at the unloading point as usual. We'll take the gear to your site, and then we're going to ask anybody that's not staying overnight needs to kind of go home, as we're trying to keep the camp just with the scouts that are going to be there, okay? So medical rechecks will be done at the Resica Elementary School. Please don't go all the way to camp because you won't get in, okay? What else I have? Along with that, troop rosters. You got to fill out one more form, troop rosters this year. We're going to ask that you send a troop roster in 1 week in advance so we know who's coming. And we're going to put a new one on the website, the roster. It's about, you have to have the name, your name on it, your address, and your telephone number. For youth, we also need the telephone number of parents. And, and if the parents are going away on vacation, you need to have that number as well to get a hold of them somehow if the parents are going away on vacation. You also need to bring 3 other copies with you when you arrive at camp before sending this one to camp. And one will stay with the medicals, one will be in your troop folder, and one for the office. So we know kind of who's in camp at all times. And we'll talk about this a little bit more as we get through it. I'm sure Steve is going to go over a lot more than just check-in here, okay? What else is happening? Talked about the email that's going to come out June 4th. Oh, and one more thing before you get into, if you want to do a pre-camp swim test, you can also send that in advance, and you won't have to do the swim test once you get into camp. You'll need to go to the pool to get the safety check, but you'll save some time. You won't have to do the swim test in camp. So that's kind of all the forms that kind of we're going to need before camp: the swim test, the roster, the medical, and the COVID-19 form. So hopefully you can find all these forms on the resicafalls.org website, and we can go walk through it a little later or something, but you go to About Us, and then the tab Special Documents. And then you'll find all the forms kind of right there, okay? What else can I talk about before we get out of here? That's about it in a nutshell, I guess. So come to the elementary school, and the address of the elementary school, if you needed to find your way to camp, is Resica Elementary School, 1 Gravel Ridge Road, East Stroudsburg, PA 18302, and that's all on the Leader's Guide and on the Resica Falls website. So they're your 2 main sources of information, and certainly you can send us an email or a text at any time, and we'll get back to you. So I hope I explained the check-in process. It's a little different, and we can't wait to see you. Okay. Thanks, Steve. I think I'm done.
All right. So just a couple of questions I want to make sure that we hit upon that were from the Q&A with this. What's happening in the medical recheck? The staff members from Resica review the medical form to make sure that everything is filled out properly and correctly on that form, as well as making sure that there's a few questions that get asked as well relating to general health, not necessarily specific to COVID, but those questions probably will be changing to have something related to COVID. The medical forms cannot be submitted electronically, all right? That is a violation, so we cannot submit those electronically, right? Somebody asked a question about the roster relating to the roster template. While some people have graciously provided us a nice and formal roster in years past, Other troops have written them down on the back of a camp map at the check-in table and didn't know some kids' last names at times. That doesn't necessarily help us in making sure we have an accurate idea of who's in camp and having contact information for those scouts and their parents if anything were to happen. So we asked you fill out this new roster template before you arrive, so that we can have all that information and ready to go. And then before we move on to our next segment, wrapping up, going through with our check-in process is going to be, we're going to film kind of a virtual walkthrough of the check-in, going from the elementary school through all the steps so that you can kind of see via YouTube video what the check-in process is going to be like on those Sundays when you arrive this year. All right, thanks, Jer. We're going to send it over to Matt Gutterman now, who's going to talk a little bit about the dining hall and a little bit about our COVID policies in general.
Thanks, Steve. So starting off with dining hall operations, one thing to keep in mind as we talk about the dining hall is that campers will be spaced 6 feet apart at all times while in the dining hall. Because this is an opportunity that won't be wearing a mask while in camp, we wanted to ensure that there was proper spacing between everyone. To accomplish this, we'll be having seating both indoors and outdoors. If you join us during a traditional summer, there have been times where we've had people seated on the porch of the dining hall, and that'll be the case this summer as well. We'll also be utilizing a couple outdoor tents to seat everyone as well. Your seating assignment will be assigned as you arrive to camp. That'll be one of the checkpoints as you come in. And both your mealtime and your assignment will be made at that point. In order to, even though we have a reduced capacity during the summer, in order to seat everyone with the proper social distancing, we'll actually be utilizing 3 meal shifts this summer. So you may be used to having 2 meals during a traditional summer. This year we have to up that to 3 to ensure that everyone has enough space between them. One thing new that we'll be doing this summer, you'll have the ability to just check your wristband. The color of your wristband and the text on the wristband will indicate which meal and which times that you'll be seated for a meal. One thing to also note is that our meals are going to have to be a little bit quicker. In order to accommodate the sanitation that has to take place between each shift, meals are going to be a little bit shorter, and some of the program that traditionally happens during a meal is going to be moved to other times throughout the day during camp. As we look at how food's going to be served this summer, one of the upsides to this for many units is that you're not going to need waiters in 2021. There's no need to send that first year scout to the dining hall to kind of learn the ropes on the first day and try and figure out where everything is and get your table set up. Waiters will not be needed for this summer. Food will be individually packaged. And we're not entirely sure what that looks like at this point, but we're working with our food service vendor now to establish what that's going to look like. Our preferred approach is a trade method because of the sustainability of that and the less impact that has. But our vendor is working with the chefs in the local area to determine what county regulations are and what other specifics to COVID we have to keep in mind for this. Just because food's going to be individually packaged or prepackaged doesn't mean that you'll be losing any options. We want to make sure that everyone still has the ability to kind of pick and choose what they're eating during a meal and kind of make that meal work for them. So we'll still be having a grab and go bar of some type. That'll feature some type of prepackaged salad and snack during lunch and dinner, and prepackaged cereal and milk and things like that at breakfast, maybe some breakfast pastries, just so you have some options during the meal as well. New for 2021 as well, we're going to be putting an extra emphasis on dietary restrictions in our policies surrounding that. So in previous years, that might not have been handled to the expectations that we set for our food staff. And we're working with them this year to make sure that there's a increased emphasis on handling dietary restrictions. There'll be a form found on the website for everyone to fill out before they come to camp if they have a dietary restriction. And that'll let our chefs know before they come to camp how many meals they need to prepare with special restrictions and whatnot. And that'll be the meals that those campers get throughout the week. So we've also had issues with scouts deciding that they don't like the meal one day, and all of a sudden they become a vegetarian for that meal when traditionally they wouldn't be. So we'll be deferring scouts to the grab and go bar for that sort of thing. But if you tell us before you come to camp that you're a vegetarian or you have another dietary restriction, you'll be eating off that menu for the entirety of the week, not picking and choosing which days you're a vegetarian or have a restriction. Andy, Steve, do we have any questions so far about the dining hall operations?
Yeah, somebody wanted to know if meals are going to be just cold or if they're going to be hot and cold.
Nope, we'll absolutely have hot and cold meals as we traditionally would.
Okay. Somebody asked about beverages and refilling water bottles.
Yep. So as part of our individually packaged food this summer, we're looking to have individually packed beverages. So you won't see shared pitchers or shared cups or anything like that. We'll also be throughout camp making sure that there's plenty of locations for filling of water bottles in a safe manner. And we're working to establish, based off of some guidelines from the CDC, what that looks like.
All right, and then somebody else asked the option about scouts that are relatives. Would they be sitting 6 feet apart as well? How will that be handled?
Yep, so at this time, we're planning on making sure that everyone has the ability to sit 6 feet apart. It's really hard for our staff and oftentimes leaders as well to keep track of where every scout is and who's related to who and whatnot. And so not just at meals, but throughout camp, you'll see that we're designing things that everyone has the ability to be socially distanced.
And probably the most important question on every leader's mind is, what about coffee?
Oh, we'll definitely have coffee. Don't worry about that.
Still working with our food service company to figure that one out. All right, thanks, Matt. And you're just going to continue on to talk about COVID in general.
So at this point, let's talk about a little bit about our daily COVID-19 protocols. So we've broken this down based off of what we're expecting out of our campers individually, out of our units, and what our camp staff will be doing to make sure that we stay safe this summer. So we're asking all of our campers, please make sure that you pack plenty of masks this summer. We will have a mask policy in place this summer. There'll be a couple designated areas where that policy might look a little bit different, but our expectation is that if you're in camp, you're wearing a mask. An exception to that will be when you're in your tent. And because of the changes to capacity this summer and the need to maintain social distancing, we're planning to have one camper per tent this summer. And as campsites get assigned and check-in times get assigned, we'll be accounting for that as well. So this gives all the scouts an area to kind of sit back and relax and kind of have their own space. And we have the capacity to do that, so we want to make sure that we're giving you that option. Units, we're asking you at the beginning of the day to do temperature checks in your campsite. Unfortunately, just because of how many people there are in camp, it's a little bit hard for our staff to be doing the temperature checks for every individual. So we're asking the units as part of their clean camp stuff at the beginning of the day to be doing a temperature check. And we'll be writing and are working on updating our emergency procedures. And we'll have clear guidelines on what that looks like and how to respond if something does come up. Continuing as part of that clean camp process, we're also asking units and placing a little bit more emphasis on making sure that every unit does a daily cleaning of their latrine in the morning. This will be one of the 2 times that we'll ensure that a latrine gets sanitized throughout the day. So make sure that as you work with your unit commissioners in camp, that you'll be focusing on cleaning your latrine once every morning. And also, we're asking units to make sure that they're packing extra masks and sanitation supplies. We do know that we'll have masks available for sale in the trading post, so that's always an option. But we also know that that first-year scout is likely to lose their mask on that first day. So make sure that you're packing supplies to help facilitate that. When it comes to camp staff, we'll be ensuring that all of our camp staff are meeting the same daily health standards that we're asking all of our campers to. So there'll be daily temperature checks for them as well, and they'll be following that masking protocol at all times. In addition to the unit cleaning their campsite latrine daily once in the morning, we'll also be making sure that there's a staff member that's going around and sanitizing each latrine once in the afternoon as well. This ensures that your latrine, which is used a little bit less frequently than some of the other areas in camp, will get cleaned twice a day. And if we need to adjust that policy as we get closer to camp, we definitely will. Camp staff will also be sanitizing high traffic areas within camp once every 2 hours. An example of that area might be like a shower house or a shared bathroom, other common areas throughout camp. Our staff will be responsible for cleaning and sanitizing the dining hall between meals. Between each sitting of a meal, our dining hall staff will be sanitizing all the tables and chairs and everything that scouts have come in contact with. And then once after each meal, they'll be cleaning as well. So you'll see that the dining hall gets cleaned 3 times a day and sanitized 9, if not more times a day. Our staff will also be responsible for making sure that any shared equipment gets sanitized. And we're also working now to develop any additional emergency procedures. This is something that started before the COVID-19 pandemic to update our emergency procedures in general, but we're definitely taking this into account as well as we go through that. Steve, Andy?
Yeah, so a couple questions that were thrown up here. Couple questions about relatives and family members sharing tents.
So we know at this time that we do know at this time that there's enough tents available for each individual to have a tent within camp, and we'll be making those assignments to ensure that every unit has the ability to space out, and then that every individual has the ability to space out. You can look forward to a little bit more guidance on tent sharing between individuals and whatnot as we get closer to camp. Some of that's going to be based around more BSA policies, COL BSA policies, and CDC policies that get updated as we get closer to camp.
Okay. Then we also, someone asks about mask wearing. Is it going to be everywhere? Is there going to be places where masks won't have to be worn?
Yep.
Things like that.
So you can look forward to a published mask policy again as we get closer to camp. But at this time, we're expecting that masks will be worn everywhere. There'll be exceptions, some small exceptions for aquatic activities, and we're in the process of writing those procedures now. And maybe the one major exception will be a scout that's in their own tent by themselves will have the ability to take off their mask.
Okay, and then someone also asked the question about will troops be potentially sharing campsites?
So troop assignments are going to be done based off of the number of people that you have registered in Double Knot, that roster that you're sending in before you come to camp, and will be primarily based off of tent alignment and aligning one person per each tent. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that means a unit might be sharing a campsite with another unit.
There is that possibility, yes, but we will make sure that there is a buffer between those units if the need arises. And I think that's all the questions we're going to take right now about COVID procedures. We still have Jacob coming up with some program things, and I'm going to talk about checkout, and then we'll hit a bunch more questions at the end. So we have a bunch more that we're going to be hitting upon still this evening. And like we say, we're serious about making sure everyone's safe. We've sat down for almost 2 months now, planning out these policies and making sure that we're going to be doing everything we possibly can to keep everyone that's going to be coming to camp safe. While some of them might lessen at some point as things progress, this is what we feel like we have to do if we were to run camp right now, which is how we feel like we have to plan. If things get better, great. But if not, this is what we know we're prepared to do to make sure that camp's going to be safe. And with that, we're going to be taking a lot of these policies very seriously. If it comes down to it and somebody is in camp, whether it's a scout, a leader, or a whole unit that is not really feeling that the policies that we have in place are what they want to be doing for their week in camp, no problem for them to head on home because safety is paramount. All right, shifting gears now, Jacob's going to give us a little bit of a program overview. So Jacob.
All right, thanks Steve for that awesome introduction. So again, my name is Jacob. I'm the program director this summer at Resica Falls Conservation. I'm super excited. So this is just a little program sneak peek. Again, the program guide is going to be coming out again pretty soon, probably within the month here. So the first thing we're going to talk about a little bit is merit badges. All classes are going to have a cap in 2021. We started in 2019 that some merit badges had caps. When we were going to be live in person in 2020, even more merit badges were going to have caps. But we went out, we took tape measures and laser distance measures and measured like every program area and saw like, logistically, how many people can we fit into this area or that area for this badge. So most badges are going to be between 10 and 15 people. We're going to make sure everybody's pre-registering for their merit badges. That way we know when we're hitting that cap, we're not going to have a merit badge that has 20 people trying to take it when it only would fit 10 people in that area to be socially distanced. So we want to make sure that everybody is utilizing double knot to register for their badges ahead of time. Again, you want to make sure that the scouts are doing that, picking the badges they want to take, looking at the schedule to see what times those badges are to be taking. That way, if for some reason something's full at one period, I think almost everything's offered more than once. So you want to make sure that you're able to check those. For our camp-wide program, we're actually this year going to have 2 nights of camp-wide games. We're going to have kind of our regular carnival on Monday night. That's going to be the camp-wide tournament of nights. Every camper that comes this summer is going to be a night. It's not very fun to train to be a knight. You just want to be a knight right off the bat and then continue to train. So everybody's going to be a knight having a lot of fun with their, tournament games. That's going to be our regular Monday night. And then that's going to be revamped games also. I did a lot of research on medieval games. So we're going to add a lot of games that were played during that time period. So it's going to be super fun and very much within theme. And then our second night, Tuesday night, we're still going to have our Ironman challenge. It's going to be race of the Kings this year. So the contestants have to get a message to the king. And then following that, we're going to have our Moat Madness, and it's actually going to be a wet carnival. So it's going to be utilize the pool a little bit. So everybody's going to get an opportunity to be in the pool that night. And also some other wet games spread around the parade field. It's just going to be a lot of fun, and make sure everybody is, if it's really hot, is staying nice and cool. Some activities are going to be split due to social distancing. We are going to have 2 flag ceremony areas at camp this summer. We're going to have the dining hall colors. We're also going to have colors at the Bend, which is the STEM Center. Back when it was part of another camp, so it was Great Bend, they had the STEM Center was their dining hall. So there is a flag pole there, and it is ready to use. So we're really excited that we're able to utilize that parade field as well to make sure everybody is social distanced. We're also going to have campfires that are going to be split. So there will be 2 opening campfires as well as our 2 closing ceremonies. And the way that we're going to split those are going to be based off of if you are on team Oakenfield Sword, or if you are on team Riverbend Shield. And that's really just going to be something that you're going to be given kind of at the check-in. So you're going to know what your unit is, and then we'll also give you the times that you'll be able to go to those. Some other things are going to be split a very similar way, are going to be polar swims. And we'll talk a little bit about that and in the end so much more. I like double wrote some notes because I was like super excited about like all the cool and fun activities. And the Scout Vesper service as well as the OA call out are also going to be split for social distance based on if you are an Oakenfield Sword or a Riverbend Shield. Some of the other awesome programs that we're offering this year, I'm going to give you 3 samples. All right. So we have a total weekly tally to see which unit or patrol is in the lead towards your overall prize for the week. So that way, if your troop or a patrol is there at the camp-wide games on Monday night, not only will you get a lot of points for winning a bunch of those games, but you also get participation points as well. So they'll go in towards that total weekly tally. If you're going to your polar swims and you're going to a call out service, you're going to be getting more and more and more of these tokens that will go towards that tally. And by the end of the week, you're going to see, oh, wow, like how are we doing? And this will really boost some attendance at some really fun activities that, you know, sometimes are a little under attended. Our second that I have is something we're going to talk about later also, which are side quests. We're going to have a quest board up. Everybody knows that if you are an adventurer in medieval times, sometimes you go off on a side quest. So if you need some extra points towards your tally, or you want to just send your troop or patrol on an adventure, you can have them take a side quest. And that might be tasks such as find a mythical creature somewhere in camp, and there'll be clues to find that. Or it might be trying to brew a potion with the wizard, and you have to find the leaves of 3 or 4 different trees and take a picture of those to bring back. So it's just some really fun side quests that kind of will give you a little bit of more adventure. The third that is listed as some more program than ever is our intelligence tells us that a neighboring kingdom is planning to perform some dastardly deeds each week this summer. So you're going to work with your unit pre-camp to learn a lot of lashing skills, to lash yourself around a 6 foot tall catapult or trebuchet. Then you're going to bring those spars with you. We're going to build it at camp. And we're going to have some extra trainings throughout the week for leaders that want to brush up on some of those lashing skills to make sure your catapult or trebuchet is up to snuff. And then we're going to launch some wet foam balls at those dastardly villains from our neighboring kingdom. And that'll be on Thursday night prior to our twilight activities. And so much more here. That's our colors. Again, they're going to be split depending on where your campsite is. We'll tell you guys which colors you'll be going to. There will be one time. We're not doing multiple times, but they're just going to be in 2 separate locations. Our campfires, again, they're going to be split for our opening and our closing award ceremonies are also going to be split, and our OA call out is going to be split times with our Scouts own Vesper service. After those, we are encouraging that if each unit wants to have a campfire in their campsite to put on skits, songs, cheers, again, following social distancing, masking, and CDC guidelines. If you're doing so, we would love for you guys to invite your favorite camp staff members. Since we're not going to be able to get together in one giant camp, revelry to enjoy everybody's skit, songs, and cheers, we want to make sure that those staff get out to see some of these like amazing campfires that you guys are going to put on. So they're going to be a little bit more individualized, but we want to make sure that everybody is able to see those as well. Again, as far as Polar Bear, we're going to be running Polar Bear Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and they're going to be split times based on your team. If you're an Oakenfield Sword or Riverbend Field or a Riverbend Shield, again, that's just a way to fairly have the camp to assure that everybody is social distancing in a really fun themed way. We're also going to have a unit banner competition. So aside from our normal gateway competition, we're also going to recommend that everybody, make a really cool themed banner. Think, medieval kingdom with their crest on the flag. So you can make a cool flag that, shows what your unit is all about. If you're really into hiking, if you're really into Klondike derbies, if you're really into first aid competitions, show us that on your banner. And then you can have that banner hanging up by your gateway. You can bring that banner with you to events, meals, things like that. So it'll be really awesome. And again, I already kind of had talked about the side quests, but again, that's kind of a way to, if you're seeing that you're lacking in that total weekly participation tally, you might say, hey, let's go out and do some of these side quests. Or maybe some of your older scouts are sitting around the campsite loafing a little bit, and you think to yourself, we got to get these guys out. You can, hey, why don't you guys or girls go do a side quest and get them out doing some really cool adventures. So again, I'm really pushing, making sure that we're super themed this summer. We want the staff to be super themed. We want the campers to be super themed, and we want to just have a safe and amazingly fun program this summer. And I'm working incredibly hard to make sure that happens. And Andy is as well. Do we want to field any questions now on anything specific, or do we want to hit that on the Q&A section, Steve?
Yeah, we got a few questions here. People are asking about troop trips like Fossil Rock and Cool Dip.
Yeah, there's no. We're still going to do our normal to Fossil Rock, to Cool Dip. Again, we're gonna find ways to social distance as best as we can. It might be one unit per. If it's a really big unit, we might split that and say by patrol or something like that. And also, on a side note there, I was thinking back when we were talking about the food. Again, you can do food requisitions if you didn't want to eat in the dining hall or on the porch or in the tent for a specific meal, and you want to go kind of take a hike somewhere in camp. Maybe you're on a quest, or you think I'm going to do this quest over a meal. Put that food requisition form in 24 hours before you need the food to your program commissioner, and they'll make sure that you're able to get some food for your epic quest.
Awesome. And then people wanted to know a little bit about the High Five Adventure Club.
Yes, awesome. Okay, so High Five Adventure Club. Let me flip to my notes here. All right, so High Five Adventure Club, I'm going to be working pretty closely with our High Adventure staff this summer to make sure that they're really getting a lot of incredible opportunities. making sure that they're also taking some really fun trips. We're actually going to be doing climbing in the afternoon as a merit badge, climbing merit badge. And a lot of the staff that would be doing that particular end of things, we're going to have them running incredible high adventure trips during the morning. So that way, those older scouts that want to take merit badges are able to do that in the afternoons. We're going to be running our high five adventure in the mornings. And again, I'm going to be talking with that high adventure staff about possibly doing some extra cool pioneering projects themselves, possibly an overnighter if they can swing that as well. Just some really fun, cool activities that we're going to be adding in. So definitely, I'm going to be working hand in hand with that staff to make sure that we're getting some incredible fun stuff.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Jacob. All right. So this is not going to be our only leaders update, I guess, of the spring season here as we're preparing for camp. So we're going to have another update on March 8th, where we're going to focus in on a lot more of the program details at that point. The program guide will be out by that. It's about a week before merit badge registration opens on March 15th. So we figured we should have another little update where we can touch base with people, give you a few more details, and maybe answer a couple more questions as we're moving along. And we'll have more updates following that in the spring as well. We're really feel that, the communicating with people as much as we possibly can before camp begins can kind of help make sure everything runs smoothly once we all get up to camp this year. So now I believe it is me talking about checkout. So in my mind, this is probably going to be the most drastic change that is going to happen this summer at camp. A Friday afternoon, evening checkout. As we were sitting down and we were talking about how are we going to make this summer work, one of the biggest concerns that I had was making sure that we were going to, beyond making sure everyone's going to be safe when they're in camp, preparing camp for the next group of campers during the changeover period. So we sat down, put our heads together, and kind of came up with this plan where we're not going to have any loss of real program time. As you can see when we go over the schedule, we're kind of going to rework some things that we typically do on Friday to make sure that everything fits in. Afternoon merit badge sessions will be consolidated over 4 days versus the 5 days for just the afternoon. So they'll be a little longer Monday through Thursday so that they still have that same amount of time in the badges. As we go through, we're going to have our typical lunch and program like we have every other day in camp. And at 2 o'clock, we're going to have a couple unique things going on. Rather than going back into our camp-wide programs, the Oakenfield Swords group that Jacob has referenced, that program group is going to participate in the closing ceremony. The Riverbend Shields group's going to go back to the campsite and start doing up some packing. At 3 o'clock, those two groups are going to shift programmatically. So the Riverbend Shields group is going to start attending the closing ceremony, and the Oakenfield Swords are going to be packing back in the site. In the middle of that, 2:30 to 3:30, we'll have our blue card reconciliation, we'll have our checkout, and all that's going to take place at the STEM Center. So we'll do a little bit of a dividing and conquering here. We'll have one leader to make sure that everything's good with the blue cards and handle the checkout of the unit, up at STEM. And then the troops, depending upon the time frame, will be either at the closing ceremony or packing up in their site. At 4 o'clock, your camp staff guide that met you and kind of guided you through the check-in process is going to kind of be with you for the checkout process to make sure everything's going to be taken care of and everything's good in the site. In addition, we're going to be sending you home with a dinner, all right, a to-go dinner that you'll be able to eat in your site before you go, or eat on the road while you're traveling back home. Our idea is to try and get everybody out of camp as easily and as quickly as possible, right? Starting with departure at 4:30. Those troops that are a little more local and don't have as far as a ride, we ask that you kind of maybe don't plan to leave right at 4:30 and stagger yourselves to maybe leave around 5:30 or so. So that way that our troops that are traveling a bit of a further distance could get home at a somewhat reasonable time on Friday evening. Just like when we checked in on Sunday, right? Any drivers that are coming up, they will have their temperature taken and turn in a COVID-19 screening form. When they arrive at camp, someone will greet them at the White House this time. So they won't go to the elementary school. They will come to the White House for that piece. And then we'll direct them to your campsite to make sure that we can get people out as quickly as possible. We will also be providing them with a dinner as well. Your dinner, there'll be a couple choices that kind of go along with that, and your camp commissioner will help organize those during your stay. And really all of this is to make sure that we can do a deep, thorough cleaning of the entire camp on Saturday, right? The staff has a day off period from Saturday late morning to Sunday late morning. That's their kind of real break only during the week and kind of required by Pennsylvania state law. So we have a limited window where we can make sure that we're going to get all this cleaning and sanitation done in the campsites, in our program areas, so we can have a total reset and be ready to go for Sunday. Like Matt said, we're kind of sanitizing stuff throughout the week, but we're going to make sure that we do a good, deep, thorough cleaning on that Saturday morning, and maybe even a little on Friday evening once everybody's gone. All right, and all of these ideas and concepts that we talked about this evening are located inside the Leader's Guide. The checkout procedures, your last day, Friday, is noted on page 18 in the Leader's Guide. The check-in stuff that Jerry talked about in the beginning is on 16 and 17. And the things that Matt and Jacob talked about are sort of sprinkled in throughout various points and general information and things like that. I guess, are there any specific questions relating to checkout?
Hey, Steve, we have a couple questions regarding units that are staying for 2 weeks or an individual scout that is staying for 2 weeks.
Okay, so a unit that is staying for 2 weeks, right, during that normal changeover period, nothing will change for that particular unit if the whole unit is staying. If there is a scout that is camping with the troop 1 week and is going to be returning as a provisional scout the following week as part of the Troop 1 provisional program during weeks 6 and 7, they will have to depart on Friday and then return again on Sunday as a new camper.
There was another question regarding kind of fears around the time and parents being able to make it up in time for the 4:30 checkout.
That is, I guess, a legitimate concern that the unit will have to make sure that you can address. We set up a checkout window of 4:30 to 7. So if 7 is more the realistic time for your unit to depart and for the drivers to arrive, that is doable. Our whole point of starting it at 4:30 was to make sure that we can get people out of camp in a timely fashion so that they're not arriving home too late into the evening. I see somebody had a question about blue card reconciliation. That'll be 2:30 to 3:30 on Friday. And then, you know, those directors probably aren't going to go anywhere if you have any further issues or details that need to be made. Some people are asking, I see, about leader swap midweek kind of thing. That is going to not really, that's not really going to be too much of an issue, okay? Any guest leader arriving midweek, person coming into camp to drop something off, that will, they'll have to sign in at the camp office, Unami Lodge. They will have to turn in a COVID-19 screening form. Their temperature will be taken at the office, and then they can kind of proceed to the campsite or the part of the camp that they'll be going towards. So that's for any kind of guests that'll be coming into camp, as well as any 2-week leaders. And then that also, I guess, hits for if a leader is running into town because you need to pick something up at Walmart because you're running out of propane in your lantern or something like that. Sign out at the camp office, and when you arrive back into camp, same procedure, temperature check when you arrive to make sure everything's still good. All right, so now we're just continuing to take general questions at this point. I know a couple places of people have asked about travel restrictions and things like that across state lines. So Pennsylvania's current travel restrictions are in order to come into the state from out of state, you need to have either a negative COVID test within 72 hours of arriving in the state, or quarantine for 10 days before arrival. We will be looking to make sure that we're going to be encouraging to make sure that people quarantine before you arrive at camp. You know, no 500 person mosh pits on Saturday night before leaving for camp on Sunday morning kind of thing. You know, we're asking people really to make sure that you're being responsible and taking this as seriously as we are. So we'll be encouraging that quarantining before 10 days before people arrive. And at this time, that's what Pennsylvania's guidelines are. They've kind of been that since around Thanksgiving. And like we said earlier, if restrictions lessen, if Pennsylvania doesn't have a travel restriction, we'll still encourage things like quarantining, but you know, it's all about what the state dictates and what the state mandates at this point. I saw a couple people also mention stuff about vaccines and stuff like that. They're probably the biggest question mark in the world right now, with how and when people are going to be vaccinated. Right now, none of the vaccines are good for any individual under the age of 16, which doesn't help the vast majority of our camper population. So if you have a vaccine, I think that's a nice plus, but we're still going to be enforcing all of our strict COVID policies here.
Steve, if I can just jump on and reiterate the policy about registrations. Unfortunately, due to our so for those that aren't aware, our current capacity is 66% of a typical summer. So in a typical summer, we'd have somewhere around 3,000, 3,100 scouts with us plus leaders. And this summer, our capacity is 2,000, which shakes out to 300 per week. So because of that, there are weeks 1 through 6, we don't have an opportunity to add scouts to at this point. If something happens where a troop's not able to come because of a state restriction or a charter organization restriction, then we will then as spots become available, some units will be able to pick up spots from a situation like that. But at this point, whether it's crossovers, a great recruitment season, something else awesome that happened, unfortunately, you're not able to increase your number of scouts in your unit above what you have currently registered for. So I'd encourage you to check your double knot registration, see what you're currently registered at. If you're not sure how to check that or lost your login, anything like that, feel free to reach out to the council office, camping at colbsa.org. That's camping, CAMPING at colbsa.org, and we can be helpful. But just wanted to kind of address that one to the whole group, that unfortunately, even for all of those great reasons that we typically would say, yeah, bring everybody. Unfortunately, as you can see with all the time the team has spent going through all of these scenarios, we're not able to have more than 300 scouts in camp at a time.
Cool. All right. Thanks, John. Do you also want to talk real quick about some refund policies?
Yeah, be happy to. So the camping committee of the Cradle Liberty Council just recently adopted a new refund policy, and really this is aimed at for those units that specifically in a COVID world want to say, hey, we want to be able to come to camp, but then something happens where you're not able to. So in broad strokes, and the full policy is available under the important documents link on the Resica Falls website. It's also available at colbsa.org/summercamp. But in broad strokes, if either a government entity, the Cradle of Liberty Council, or your chartered organization say, hey, you can't go to camp, then you'll get a free refund. From a charter organization standpoint, that decision needs to be made at least 4 weeks prior to camp. We ask that just so we, also have some time for, these, Weeblos and others that could then backfill those spots. We want to be able to hopefully keep a full but safe camp. So, and full, I mean, 300, not our normal 550. So that is our policy with COVID. Also, if individuals are not comfortable with coming to camp, but had signed up, there's a 4-week prior to your arrival, a 4-week window where longer than 4 weeks out, you could drop without a penalty. So that's in broad strokes our COVID refund, or our COVID section of the refund policy. We also issue refunds for medical concern, for other medical reasons, summer school, deaths in the family or a very close friend, deployment, military deployment, and other things. So take a look at that refund policy, but that's the broad strokes of it.
Cool. Thank you, John. I know there's been a few questions about camperships. That form's in its final touches and should be up on the website shortly. Again, that is kind of a little tweaking of the form that we've used in the past. It'll be done as a Google form. So that is going to be up shortly. Is there going to be if there is a positive case, what exactly happens? Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about our in-camp response if there is a positive case or a suspected positive case?
Absolutely. So we're asking that any suspected positive cases, anyone make their way immediately to the health lodge. We'll have spaces set up for quarantining. And we're currently working on potential testing opportunities to see if we can get some type of fast test to respond to that immediately. Our health officers will respond in either situation to a positive case or a negative based off of the policies that we receive from our standing orders and whatnot. And notification will take place through the local county and their health department and everything surrounding that based off their guidance. If we do have to place someone into a quarantine within the health lodge, please note that we will be asking parents to come pick up that scout that same day. There won't be the ability to stay in camp long term.
All right, great, thank you. And then if there is a actual positive case that happens rather than a presumptive positive, we will be notifying all campers, units, unit leaders of that once we are made aware of it. And that could potentially happen up to 2 weeks after the departure from camp. If a scout says, goes home and says, hey, oh, I tested positive kind of thing, there's steps and procedures that we have to put into place. But that does involve contacting every unit, camper, and leader. John, there's a question here about if your local council is not currently allowing camping.
That is a great question. And I think that was our friend Rabbi Lisa, if I'm not mistaken here. But yes, so if your local council is not allowing it, I would probably have a conversation with them, or we could even broach that conversation with them. A lot of times they're going off of a state guideline, maybe for their camp or for, that their state has put in place that would not necessarily apply to your, if you were to go out of state. So yeah, if a council, we would treat that like the charter organization, not allowing them, but we'd encourage you to have, or we can have that conversation with your council to see if that's a policy that has to be enforced still, or if that's something that could be relaxed given the fact that you're traveling to a different state. And every council will treat that differently. That's one of the reasons why we added that if Cradle Liberty Council decides to close camp, if we feel the need to close, but other camps are open, you'll also get a full refund in that case. But great question.
Okay. Best way to check if slots have opened up for additional campers. I believe there is a way to look and see what the current registration numbers are in Double Knot in a public access kind of way, right, John?
There is. We have not enabled that yet. We've made sure we had a couple of units that had no scouts in, and now that everything's level set, we'll be making that available in March.
Okay, so that'll be available in March. So I would say kind of keep an eye checking on that. And, if it looks like that number of scouts drops below 300, that means we have a couple openings probably for a unit to add in. I would recommend that, if you feel like you're going to be bringing 15 scouts and you have 15 scouts registered, don't necessarily drop that down to 10 because you're not entirely sure yet. Kind of hold on to that 15 because you're not going to be able to jump back up most likely because other units will probably gobble up those other 5 scout spots.
That being said, I'll jump in. That being said, that if you're not going to, if you're positive you're not going to need them, then please return them as quickly as possible so we can help, get other scouts in that will use them.
Okay, another couple questions about merit badge registrations. That'll open on March 15th. March 15th is merit badge registrations will be open. What happens if there's other people that are near the sick camper? Do they have to leave too? So the idea with such a stringent mask policy, the 6 feet of social distancing in our program areas, when they'll still be wearing masks, and 6 feet of social distancing in places like the pool and at mealtime when they won't potentially be wearing masks, is to ensure that there is that buffer. So if all the policies are being followed, then those other scouts wouldn't be in contact or wouldn't necessarily be at risk. As long as all those policies are being followed, which I think is also something to kind of keep in mind, even with family members and siblings and things like that. It takes some time for symptoms to kind of manifest. If an older brother was out with some friends the week before and the other brother wasn't there, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're okay to hang out together without masks on or sleep in the same tent kind of thing. So I think that we need to be mindful of that as well. Is there ability to add more adults? Yes, you are able to add more adults to kind of meet the needs of your unit. I would also say that it would probably be of best interest for most units to try and have more than the required 2 leaders during your stay at camp this summer in case somebody were to get sick or something like that happens and someone has to leave. Someone at home finds out that they tested positive for COVID, you know, probably going to have those leaders, that leader or even those scouts kind of head home to mitigate any kind of risk. So I think that is a point to be had. Is that the end of our questions here? Cool. All right. So at
this point, the more adults cannot be added once we reopen the system. If there are spots at that point, then adults can be added.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right, so at this point, we're kind of wrapping up for the evening. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening and kind of going over and listening to what we have to say as we're committed to making sure we're running a safe camp this summer. So a recording of this will be available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Resica Falls. So you can share it out with other members of your troops, parents, things like that, if in case they have any questions or concerns. You can also ask us with any more questions, hello@resicafalls.org. We'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can, hopefully being able to answer all your questions. We really are committed to making sure that 2021 is a fun and safe camping experience for all the scouts, all the leaders, and our camp staff. So thank you, and we'll see you in camp or on March 8th.